everybody. How are you guys tonight? Everybody good? Okay, we've still got more people coming on, so this may take a couple minutes, but we're going to go ahead and get started. The last time that we saw each other, which was 2 weeks ago, we did not get through introducing everybody, so we're going to do that again tonight because I think it's important that you guys get to know each other. So if you're new to the meeting, welcome, glad to have you, and if you're with us the first time, welcome back. So if you did not introduce yourself at in our first meeting back May the 9th, I guess, please tell us your name, your current position, and where you work at. Sorry, that was bad English too. I did a sentence with a preposition. Shouldn't do it. Okay, so who wants to introduce themselves?
I'll go first.
Okay. Hey, Robert.
My name is RJ Middleton. I'm at North DeSoto High School in Stonewall, Louisiana. I'm the offensive coordinator for the football team. I'm a lead teacher. I teach pre-AP world history. Also teach a couple of our jump start courses, do our clip work, kind of whatever they need me to do. So.
Awesome. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Who's up next?
I'll go.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Cedric Ville. I'm a master teacher at West St. John High, and I've been doing that for 1 year, and it's under the NIET TAP rubric.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So for those people that maybe don't know what that means, would you explain that real quickly for us?
The TAP rubric is an instructional practices rubric, and we use it to coach teachers in the best practices instructionally, and hopefully that leads to student achievement and teacher growth.
Excellent. Thanks, Cedric. Love, love, love the idea of teacher coaching. I'm telling you, the research says that is the most powerful reform strategy that you can possibly use. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
Kimberly, were you up next?
Hi, yes, I teach at Central High School. It started about 10 years ago. It's an offshoot of the EBR, the East Baton Rouge. They started their own school. I'm a health science department head there. This is my 5th year teaching for that.
Thank you. We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and guys, if you're new to Zoom, if you, unless you're speaking, would you mute your mic so we don't pick up all kinds of background noise? Just because it makes it hard to hear. Okay, who's up next?
Hi.
Hey, Katina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katina Lane. I'm a 20-year veteran teacher. Most of my time has been in elementary. I recently decided to go to alternative program. So this is my 3rd year there, and I am the reading special ed teacher and the electives high school teacher there in Mansfield, Louisiana.
Wow. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
You've got quite the job. Hey, who's up next?
Hi, I'm Amy McNeil. I'm a 2nd grade teacher at Oak Forest Academy. I was a social worker for about 10 to 15 years, and then I decided to take a break. So I've been taking a break for 12 years, and I love it. I love my break. It's a great job. Just try to do my best every day.
Thanks, Amy. Some would say that teaching is not a far cry from social work, so thank you. We're glad that you made that transition. Okay, who's up next?
I'll go.
Okay.
My name is Elizabeth Callaghan. I just finished my 9th year teaching 5th grade math and science in East Baton Rouge Parish.
Awesome. Welcome. So does your school stop at 5th grade before they go to middle school?
They do. They do.
Yeah. So I bet they have that senioritis kind of stuff going on right now, don't they?
Very much so. And we were lucky to have, they've had a promotion ceremony on the 17th, so they haven't been back since then. So it's been a nice little break.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Okay, who's up next?
Hi, I'm Lauren Bethencourt, and I'm an 8th grade science teacher at Boyette Junior High.
Oh, God bless you, middle school people. I was a middle school principal for 3 years, and I felt like I served my time and got to move on to high school. So I have the utmost respect for middle school. especially this time of year. Their hormones on feet. Who's up next?
Hi, I'm Alicia Ward. I'm also a middle school teacher. I do middle school design, which is like STEM, and I'm also the technology coordinator.
Oh, very cool. I love that. Yeah, design is really an awesome concept. So very exciting. And like I said, God bless you, middle school people. I don't know how y'all do it. Okay, who else?
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Tostan. I'm a teacher, a kindergarten teacher at Elio Judice Elementary near Lafayette.
Awesome. So kindergarten students are awesome this time of year. Seniors.
We're done.
Oh, look at you guys. See, I'm used to Texas where we went till June. So I'm just not used to everybody being out so early. Who's up now? We get everybody? Surely not.
Hi, I'm Lenore Foles, and I actually teach 11th and 12th grade English.
Oh, okay. I taught
in Iberia. Sorry.
No, that's fine. In West Iberia, is that what you said?
At Westgate, and it's in Iberia.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to see the seniors go by now. I know that because they are, give me a kindergartner anytime versus a senior right now. Ooh. Okay, who else?
Hi, I'm Amanda Gregory. I'm a middle school teacher. I teach 6th grade ELA in Lafayette Parish.
Okay, another middle school person. Hats off to you guys. Although 6th graders are the best of the middle schoolers, 7th graders are the absolute worst. Just my opinion. Okay, who's next? Have we gotten everybody? Okay, well, with that being said, I'm going to assume that we've gotten everybody here. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to do tonight. Since we've got a few new people joining us, just to kind of remind everybody, please feel free to call me Tracy. I am not a doctor. Someday I hope to be, but not quite yet. And also, feel free, guys, if you need something, you are welcome to text me. I spent too many years of my life with teenagers, so I am one of those horrible people. I will not listen to a voicemail, so you're wasting your breath. If you need me, text me. Just make sure you tell me who you are, because between my previous jobs and all that, probably thousands of people have my phone number, literally. So tell me who you are, and don't assume that I'm going to figure it out, because I probably won't. Also, to remember as well that, guys, I understand now, I know you guys are probably all out of school, but there are still some people in other states that are going. Still, I understand what it's like to work in public ed. So, if you need an extension on a deadline or family stuff happens or whatever, just communicate that with me. And I'm not a huge stickler about, oh my gosh, you were 2 minutes late on submission, etc. Also, too, for the group assignment, I don't know what I have done in Moodle. Moodle kind of hates me some days. And so you cannot submit your group assignment in Moodle. I worked on it again today, and I think maybe one group can. I think group A can, but nobody else. So again, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And my Moodle guru, who offices 2 doors down from me, is out of town. And so she won't be back till next week. So in the meantime, if you cannot get an assignment to submit, just email it to me. Either one is fine. I do prefer Moodle just because it archives everything for us, but if it doesn't work, that's okay. Also, too, totally lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. I'm a little bit behind in the course for 2 reasons. So just to kind of let you know what's going on. I inherited another class. It started on May 7th. It was supposed to have a professor, a new adjunct teaching, but just all kinds of stuff happens. So that class was handed to me with absolutely no content, nothing, literally. So I've had to build that class very, very quickly. So quite honestly, I've neglected you guys. But the good news is I stayed up practically all night last night, got the class built, got them up and running, so I should be back on track, but I apologize for that. Also, too, my youngest stepdaughter graduated from high school, so we had to celebrate that for a whole week. So we're past that now, so hopefully I'm back on track. In terms of the group assignment, yes, just a reminder, it's not due until June the 10th, but I would encourage you guys to get things done. I went ahead and opened up some additional modules for you through at least week 5. I will probably get week 6 and 7 open and ready for you, I would say within the next day or two. I just want to kind of look at it again. But you will notice that things begin to accumulate, I guess is lack of a better word. So if you wait until June the 10th to do your group assignment or June the 10th to turn in your case study or whatever, you might just find that you're spiraling a little bit into some challenges just because a lot of stuff starts happening. Also, too, I tried to give you a break on some discussion forums and reflective question assignments, and I will just modify the grading scale accordingly. So, don't freak out, but we said we'd have, 5 or 6 discussion forums or 5 or 6 reflective questions, and we only ended up doing 4. Just enjoy the fact that you don't have to do 6, and I'll adjust the scale accordingly. So, okay, any kind of burning questions or anything like that as far as where we are? Yeah. And Andy, are you raising your hand or just kind of messing around? Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, what I want to talk to you guys tonight about is really understanding and reading a standard. Now, lots of people, probably all of us, have looked at and read standards, whether they are our local or parish or district standards that were given in curriculum, or those standards that our state has given us and published, or Common Core from the federal government. The trick, though, to really understanding and reading a standard is making sure that you are able to unpack or break it into component pieces. Because far too frequently, we tend to read a standard in a very cursory manner. And believe it or not, the punctuation that they use when a standard is written is very, very important. So for example, I gave you in the PowerPoint presentation for tonight a couple of examples of Louisiana standards. So I'm going to read one of them to you right now. So this is for grade 6, English Language Arts. And it says, analyze how a particular sentence, comma, chapter, comma, scene, or stanza fits into the overall structure of a text and contributes to the development of the theme, comma, setting, comma, or plot. Now, why do you think I emphasize those commas? What do you think that means? Any ideas? Why do you think those commas matter?
You get to choose one of those things.
Okay, you can choose one of those things. Other ideas? I will call on you shamelessly too, because I can see all of you in your names.
It combined a bunch of old standards together in one. So they basically consolidated them into one, and now all of the stuff we have to teach is now in one standard instead of like 4.
Okay, so yeah, both of you guys were on point with that. A lot of people said, this was particularly true about 10, 12 years ago, that we had too many standards to teach. So like Anna said, instead of going in and eliminating some standards, they just combined them, 2 or 3, into a single standard. Now, why does the punctuation matter? Well, according to Margaret Kilgo, who has done intensive study and research of standards, each one of those punctuation marks indicates a separate skill or concept that needs to be taught. So from our example, we need to make sure that students know how to analyze sentence and how it fits into the structure, a chapter and how it fits into the overall structure of a text, a scene and how it fits into the overall structure of a text, as well as a stanza. So notice that we are not just talking about overall how particular parts of a story or a literature piece or a poem fits in, but we are talking about very specific discrete skills. It also talks about how does a sentence fit into and contribute to the development of a theme? How does a chapter fit into and contribute to the development of a theme? a scene, a stanza, etc. The same thing is true for each one of those discrete elements and how they contribute to the setting. And then again, how each one of those contributes to the plot. So far too often as teachers, we look at this and we go, oh, I get it. So we teach that skill using a chapter and we think we're done. Well, guess what? When the kids go to take the state standardized test, that skill is tested using a poem. And we wonder why they don't do well, because we, quote, taught the skill. So according to Margaret Kilgo and others who study standards all the time, you have to really, really pay attention to each one of the elements. You start by looking at the verb, so in this case it's analyze. You also pay attention to the punctuation because commas mean we're entering into a new skill. We also have to pay attention to how it all works together. So like I said, if we teach, sorry, my dog is over here crying. I think she needs out. And my husband's on the phone in the other room. Guys, I'm gonna step away for just a second. I gotta go let my dog out. Hang on. She will continue to get louder and louder if I don't. Be right back. Come on, Tristan, go outside. Sorry about that. She's 14 and she tells me what she wants. Okay, so anyway, it is really important, and that's true no matter what the content. So you have to understand how these are put together in terms of structure. Now in Texas, they don't make it as straightforward as Louisiana. So you have both readiness standards as well as particular skill standards. And a lot of people think all we have to teach are the skill standards. But in reality, you also have to teach the readiness standards. So know across state curriculums, they're going to be put together differently. But do not ever underestimate what each one of those pieces mean. Because if you don't break apart that standard and make sure you're teaching every component to depth and complexity, then we're in trouble. Here's the other problem. Analyze is a verb that's pretty high on the Bloom's taxonomy. Analyzing something is very different than naming it or identifying it. Analyzing is an application level. So if I were teaching that standard, I have to do more than just getting students to identify it. I have to make sure that they can look at a sentence, break it apart, analyze it, figure out how it helps with the structure of the text and how it develops, let's say, the theme. Pretty complex for a sixth grader. It's hard enough to explain if you've ever taught English language arts what theme is, period, to a sixth grader, let alone how a sentence within a text, a single sentence, helps to develop the theme. So spend some time really thinking about the standards, and that's part of what we're going to work on in this class is to really unpack or break down a standard. Okay, so I've given you a lot of examples from all over the country, Common Core, Louisiana, Texas, West Virginia. Who else did I give you? I guess that was all that I gave you in the presentation. But you will notice that no matter what the state, how they structure their curriculum or the local district or parish, there are similarities across them. And we've talked in depth about that tonight. So what I want you to do is to think for a minute about if I were to give you 5 standards and ask you to, quote, unpack them or to break them apart so that you could tell me what are the concepts and the skills that students need to learn, what is the level of Bloom's taxonomy that it needs to be taught at for students to do well on it, and how it is that that should be integrated into your curriculum. Tell me, and we're just going to do a simple poll. So you're going to use your fingers, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Please don't use an inappropriate symbol when we do this. But if you feel like if I gave you those 5 tonight, you would be familiar enough with unpacking or breaking apart a standard that you could teach others, that's a 1. If you're familiar enough to work alongside somebody else doing it, that's a 2. If you're still learning, but you feel pretty familiar with the idea and process, that's a 3. or 4, okay, this is all brand new to me. You've added some stuff I didn't know about, so I really need some help. So everybody show me hands. Let me kind of get a sense of where you guys are. Okay. Lots of 2s. Hang on, I got to switch pages because we have lots of participants tonight. Okay, 2s and 3s mostly. Okay, that helps me a lot because I'm seeing mostly 2s and 3s, a couple of 1s. So I could be really mean and point out the 1s so you can harass them when you have questions, about it. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on stuff that you guys are like, oh, we learned that a long time ago, because there's plenty that we could learn instead. But since everybody's kind of about a 2 or a 3, let's do a little bit more talking about it. So why do you think it's important to unpack a standard? What are your thoughts?
One of the main reasons to unpack a standard, it tells what the student should be able to do and also what they have to do. So when we analyze the verb, when we look at the verb inside the standard, that directs us to the student actions. Student actions kind of lead into the teacher action, because if we go deeper into the standard, we can see exactly what the teacher has to prepare for in order to get the student to execute that action.
Great answer, Cedric. You're absolutely right, guys. It all starts with the verb, okay? Not only does that verb tell us what level that we need to teach the students to, it also tells us how the teacher should be presenting the information. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Not only does it tell us those 2 pieces, if we go into a classroom to observe that teacher and we look specifically at the kind of assignment or work students are doing, if there is a mismatch between the verb and the standard and the kind of work students are having to do, guys, we have a problem. And that's quite honestly why we see schools struggle with their student achievement results. Let me give you a very concrete example. So when I was the area superintendent in Dallas, part of what I did was I supervised 14 school principals. And part of my work included that I would go into the school and the principal and I would do what we called learning walks. And in those learning walks, we would look at what the teacher was doing, but most importantly, we looked at what the students were doing. So sometimes that meant analyzing the student work. It maybe meant asking the students questions. It maybe was actually watching the particular collaborative work or activity they were doing. It just kind of depended. Oftentimes, we would look at the teacher's lesson plans, and they would have that standard, they'd have it unpacked, and they'd have their lesson plan written at the same level as the standard. So, for example, in the one I used earlier, everything seemed to line up. They unpacked it, they looked like their lesson plan was written at the analyzed level, but guess what? When I watched the kids in the classroom, they were no more analyzing a piece of text for plot or theme or setting than anything. So there was a huge mismatch between the written curriculum or intended curriculum and the taught curriculum. So when we talk about student achievement and how curriculum and assessment and instruction must all align and form that CIA triad that we've talked about before, we have to also dig a little bit deeper. So we're going to talk more about not only thinking through the lesson and planning correctly and appropriately, but most importantly, analyzing student work to ensure that there is not that mismatch. Sometimes I've even seen pretty good work, but then I listened to the questions that the teacher was asking, or more importantly, the questions students were asking each other. And again, they were not at the higher end of Bloom's. So we had to do some very intentional work as a principal coach, and then as my principals and assistant principals as coaches for our teachers, to make sure that everything that we were doing was at the right level. Because like I said, if there's a mismatch anywhere, we get these not so good student results, okay? So let's think about, hang on, I'm just gonna look at my notes here for a second. So tell me, if you're thinking about a standard, what are the processes or pieces that we need to follow to be able to unpack that standard. Any ideas? And somebody just put in too, to see what they know, understand, and are able to do and should be doing. Okay, awesome. Okay.
I really like the idea of breaking apart the standard into the nouns and verbs as a first step, just to kind of, no matter who's working with it, if they're understanding those basic ideas and then those basic action words, then they're kind of figuring out, okay, what needs to be done and what are they going to do. So that I really enjoyed starting with that part. I've never really unpacked a standard kind of with the template that you gave.
Thanks, Aaron. Great answer, and you're absolutely right. You have to start with the verb and the nouns because that tells us what level we're teaching at and what we need to do. So critical point. Rebecca just added that you have to make sure you're scaffolding and using higher order thinking. Absolutely. Okay. What other component pieces are important?
Tracy, can I just give an example of a time that my kindergarten, not my kindergarten team, but kindergarten in Lafayette Parish altogether, some of the teachers were had a misconception or misunderstanding of the standard. It was a simple standard such for kindergarten, combining shapes to form other shapes or to form, create objects. So they were getting kids to put like a triangle roof and a square little house and a circle sun. I'm like, no. That's talking about putting two squares together to make a rectangle, putting two triangles together to make a rhombus, those kind of things. They were totally misinterpreting. So you got to be careful about making sure you know what you're supposed to be teaching.
Great point, Anne-Marie, thank you. And I will tell you one of the things that I see happen again and again and again. Most school districts, most parishes, give you a curriculum. And in it, they have unpacked the standards and they've given you lesson ideas and materials and all kinds of things. Very few schools spend time actually looking at the standard and unpacking it. And much like Aaron said and Anne-Marie said and Cedric has said as well, if you don't spend time really understanding the standard, then guess what? I can take the canned curriculum from anybody and teach it, but am I going to teach it the way it needs to be? Am I going to teach it to depth and complexity? Am I going to make sure that my students are gathering the concepts and skills that they need for transfer of learning, not only on a test, but from grade level to grade level, or concept to concept, or subject to subject? No. So guys, I would really encourage you, if you're not doing this in your school, and personally, I think the best way to do it is through a professional learning community, because I love PLCs too. Then convince your principal or convince your department chair or grade level chair, or if you're the lead, to do this because it really matters. And standards too, very rarely is a standard written and it's going to be the same standard 10 years from now. They're always evolving and changing. We also introduce new standards, or we revise the standards, or we do all kinds of things to the standards. So if we don't spend time unpacking them, we are in trouble. And again, we often wonder why our schools are not performing or our students aren't achieving. That's part of the problem. It's sort of like building a house, and you just assume the contractor did a good job with the foundation, and then as you build the walls, you notice that, oh my gosh, the foundation's maybe not as solid as it needs to be. It is your job as a teacher to spend time with standards. And if you're in a leadership role, or you're going to be in a leadership role later on, it's your job to teach teachers how to do this correctly. Because again, very important. So Kimberly, if you're reading the chat, yeah, big year and problem in science. Yeah, because quite honestly, people didn't spend the time. Good, and I'm glad to hear Bossier is doing that. Webster does a lot of work with that as well. So, they have good achievement results, but very important. Okay, and then some of you are having to do this, on your own. Particularly if you're in a small school or a private school or whatever, you may not have a central office that does this for you. You may not have a team. You may be doing it completely on your own. So, I am a huge fan of Wiggins and McTighe. The backwards design model is proven. It works. Seen it work. I've used it. And the templates that they provide are really awesome and pretty easy to use. Okay, some people use the Louisiana Believe State website, but again, guys, spend time unpacking those standards. The other part of it is too, this is not a very politically correct thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I know some people at the State Department of Education in Louisiana and Texas. They are not nearly as wonderful and bright and smart as you guys are. So I would trust your work with those state standards much more than I would theirs. I can also say the same thing is true, having been in charge of curriculum and instruction in 2 very large school districts. Sometimes the people that were doing that work were not our best, and they had to have a lot of direction and correction. So guys, trust yourselves. You are awesome at this, and make sure that you do spend some time doing it. Okay, so let's think about, as you're unpacking that standard, what is it that you are thinking about in terms of outcomes for your students? Okay, so what are those things that you are benchmarking to or towards? What are those critical things that you want your students to be able to do? Anybody? There's no wrong answer, so jump on in. Okay, well, I'll help you guys out. So when you think about what are the outcomes, you should make sure that your kids are gaining knowledge. Okay, that seems pretty obvious. You need to also make sure that they are gaining reasoning and thinking skills. You also need to make sure that they are developing and able to achieve specific targets for both skills, performance, and concepts. Also, as you're unpacking the standard, think about what is the product that you want your students to be able to do that demonstrates that they have actually mastered that unpacked standard. Okay? So without those components, it's kind of like, again, building the building, only this time you're trying to do it without a blueprint, or the idea of a finished product. So one of the elements in backwards design is that you begin with the big picture. So what is it I want my kids to be able to know and to do, and how are they going to demonstrate that? Then I look at the standard and I unpack it and break it apart into its component pieces. And in doing so, I'm paying particular attention to my verbs, to my nouns, and to all of those punctuation pieces. The verb tells us the level of reasoning or critical thinking that's needed to master that. The nouns tell us what are those discrete, or not discrete, but those sort of bigger concepts or ideas that the kids need to be able to do. And then the punctuation breaks them into specific or discrete skills. So if you don't have that big picture in mind of what it is you want your kids to be able to do, you really are starting, like I said, you're shooting at a target that's yet to be seen or defined. Does that kind of make sense? So in the, actually in the PowerPoint, and you can read this, I'm not going to go through all of this tonight, but just quickly. So if we think about knowledge targets, what's the factual information or procedural knowledge or conceptual understanding of a discipline? So science comes to mind. When we talk about scaffolding or background knowledge, you have to know what a kid needs to have already learned to be able to do maybe the next step. So for example, let's assume we're in a 9th grade biology class, and the students are going to use a microscope to analyze and compare different types of cells. Well, what kind of background knowledge do they need? Well, obviously they need to know what a cell is. They need to know what they're looking at. They need to know how to use a microscope. If we're not aware of those pieces, we can unpack the standard all day. We can develop great learning targets. We can even come up with a great product. But guess what? You put it in front of the kids and they have never used a microscope in their lives. Well, all that planning and all that work is for naught. So you also have to think about, in terms of your knowledge, like I said, the big picture, what is it the background information too that students need to know? Reasoning targets. What are those thought processes that students have to learn and be able to use within a range of subjects? So one of my favorite things in the world is called thinking maps. Raise your hand if you are familiar with thinking maps. Anybody? Okay, awesome. Some people talk about graphic organizers, whatever. In an ideal world, kids are taught how to critically think. It doesn't just happen, guys, by osmosis. There's actually a process, just like there's a process to teach someone how to be creative. In an ideal world, those reasoning targets are taught way back in pre-K, kinder, and first. So by the time they get to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, already in place. In reality, that doesn't happen. Not only do our kids move around and change schools frequently, not every teacher does, all of the component pieces, etc. So you also have to be aware, do your kids know how to synthesize information? Do they know how to use inferencing skills? One of the things I used to say all the time to my seniors, and back when I was in Dallas, our seniors stayed with us, it was painful, through graduation. So, but they'd already done and finished their final exams. They already had their grades, but for some stupid reason, it took the district a week to be able to get all that posted and ready for graduation. And God forbid we should turn these 18-year-olds out into the real world for a week on their own. So we had to come up with, as high school principals, a week's worth of activities to keep the kids occupied. So we would do things like we'd have the senior faculty volleyball game. Then, it was like wink, wink. After the volleyball game, you're going to go work on your senior project or your individual community service. And, the kids would be like, huh? I'd be like, use your inferencing skills. And they had not a clue what I was talking about. And it dawned on me, we had done a really dismal job of teaching the kids to read between the lines or to inference or to figure out what the wink and nod meant. So that's what I'm talking about when we talk about teaching reasoning skills. Don't assume kids have them. Build in ways to teach them how to synthesize, how to analyze, how to apply, how to develop or create or construct or whatever the verb is. If your kids know it, great. But if they don't forget to teach it. Okay, skills we all know what a skill is. That's pretty simple. Products. Again, remember, it goes back to that idea of mismatching. So again, if I'm going to teach a student to analyze, maybe what I really want them to do in terms of their work product is to construct or to synthesize. I always suggest whatever the verb is and whatever level it is on Bloom's, go 1 to 2 levels higher when you design the student's product. That way you can make sure that you're pushing them to really think critically and problem solve. Okay, so with all that being said, I think that's pretty much it. How many of you guys do essential questions? Okay, a few of you. Do y'all know what I'm talking about when I talk about essential questions? There are certain people you'll learn if you spend any time with me that are like my favorite researchers ever. Heidi Hayes Jacobs is one of those people. She is the one who actually developed the idea and the concept of an essential question. So, I know when I was in Dallas with our somewhat controversial superintendent, Mike Miles at the time, if you don't believe me, it was controversial, just do a Google search. Personally, I thought the man was brilliant, but he had every teacher had to write an objective for every lesson. It had to be on the board, it had to be gone over with the students, and then they had to do what he called the demonstration of learning. Basically, it was sort of the essential question for dummies version that he had taken. Far too often, we don't tell kids what it is we want them to learn, and we don't tell them how they're going to show us they've learned it. And that's the idea behind essential questions. I think essential questions are critical in a well-written unit plan, lesson plan, on the board, etc. Because we need to let kids know what it is that they are going to be doing and what it is that is sort of the central idea or element in a particular lesson. So we'll talk more about that as we get into this, but as you're unpacking standards and thinking about development of a sound curriculum plan that leads to a sound unit plan, etc., the essential question can be a really, really helpful component. Yeah, somebody said they post I can statements. Yeah, it's very much like that. So I can, or you will be able to by the end of this lesson do blah, 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 blah. Okay? All right, guys, so let me just look at my notes and see if there's anything else that wanted to go over with you guys. So I know that you've been playing with the template and understanding designs. Well, I cannot speak all of a sudden. Understanding by design and backwards design process. So what comments, thoughts, questions do you guys have? Sorry, I'm looking at the group chats too. Oh, where do you find Grant Wiggins' blog? I go to Google and I type in Grant Wiggins and it takes me right to his stuff. Actually, you know what? It's also under McTighe. And if you can't find it, just email me and I'll post it in the forum for everybody what the actual website is. But yeah, understanding by design there's tons of information out there. Very, very universally respected and used, I guess is probably the best way to put it. Okay. What else, guys?
I've run into some conflict with kind of working backwards from standards or working backwards from a mission or a vision, and but also because we're in a special education environment, and even if what we do is for very, kids who have similar disabilities, we have to combine working backwards with meeting the individual needs of the student. So we almost kind of end up working in the middle. And I'm wondering if there's been any experience with that, or if I'm just completely confused on the entire topic, because I really like the working backward principle, but I'm not quite sure exactly how to make it work in a SPED environment.
Yeah, back when I was the principal at MacArthur High School in Irving, big 5A, large high school. Back then, 5A was the biggest schools in Texas. Now it's 6A, but had about 2,800 students at the time. We did an IEP for every kid, which a lot of people thought we were insane, but it was incredibly effective. Very, very diverse high school. Lots of low socioeconomic students, every kind of race, color, creed, students from the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor. So, and a very sizable special education population. We had about 12% of our students were special needs. In fact, if you've done school law, you may be familiar with the Supreme Court case, Tatro versus Irving ISD, which had to do with how much or how far should a school or school district have to go to meet the needs of a physically challenged child. So we were very familiar with, all of these issues because that was actually a student at my school. The case preceded me, but very cognizant of what that meant. If I can find the graphic that we developed, I think it would explain it for you, Erin, pretty well, but I'll do my best because that's God knows where in my stuff. But just to kind of think in this term. So if you start with the big idea, whatever that is. Now, what we chose to do and worked really well for us was we started with, and this may seem somewhat counters what I'm talking about, but just kind of bear with me, okay? So we started with the portrait of a graduate. So by the time a student graduated from us, and I had a very high population of second language learners. I had a very large immigrant population, like I said, a pretty large special ed population, regular kids, gifted, you name it, I had them all. So the idea was, what is it that we want a student to know and be able to do by the time they left us, okay, as a graduate? So it included soft skills as well as academic skills. We weren't terribly discrete. We were pretty global. It was just a laundry list. Then from there, we worked upwards and then we worked downwards with it. So once we knew what it was that we wanted our graduates to do, we spent a lot of time developing our vision. Somebody asked the other day, what's the difference between a vision and a mission? The vision is sort of your aspiration. This is what we want to be. This is what we hope to be as an entity or an organization. Whereas your mission is more specific. These are the things we're actually going to be doing to accomplish that vision. Okay, so we developed our vision, then we developed our mission. From there, we got even more specific and we developed our tagline. We actually went through a complete branding process like they use in marketing or in advertising, where we branded ourselves and we had a tagline. It was 2 words, all it was, but that helped us to really kind of bear down on what we were all about. Okay, and so our tagline was we wanted to be creative revolutionaries. Once we had done all of that work, then we were able to use those components to really begin to pull the standards that we were going to be working towards and unpack them. Then, so if you've got sort of this, it's not even a pyramid, it's kind of more like the, I don't know, Parthenon or something. So you have this big idea with the vision, and you have the mission under it, then you have pillars or pieces. So we took our standards and then we unpacked them and differentiated them according to different student needs. So for example, with our special ed students who were learning disabled, this is how we're going to teach this and get them to this level based on that. Then for our gifted students, here's how far we're going to push them. So the idea became that our curriculum and our standards that we were using was differentiated according to student needs. Then from there, we literally spent time with every single student, and we wrote them an individualized education plan based on the standards and how far they needed to go to be able to master that. So it was a long process. It took us a long time to get there. But once we did, everybody was on board, and we became the first truly diverse high school in the country to get the National Blue Ribbon Schools Award. We were also named that year by the Intel Foundation the best school in the country. And like I said, it had nothing to do with me as the leader. It was just that everybody got in there and dug in and did the work. And amazingly enough, as the kids, as we developed these individualized education plans, my kids became masters in unpacking a standard and creating their own learning goals and learning plans to meet that standard. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter what your tag was or your label was. You had to pass the state level graduation test to get a diploma in Texas. And so we found a way to do that. Now, some kids' plans had to have a lot more scaffolding to get them to the standard. Other kids were like, they mastered that standard a long time ago, so we were able to move them on through enrichment. So it just really, like I said, it's sort of defining who you are, what you're about, what's your philosophy, what it is we aspire to do, and then figuring out the pieces that are going to get everybody there. Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions, guys? You guys are making this too easy on me tonight. Wow. Okay, just a quick editorial comment, and then if we've got any more questions, we'll answer those. If not, we'll go. I may have told you all this, I'm sorry. Yeah, when I was a teacher back in the day in high school, I taught high school English, and then I taught special ed in elementary and all that. I always asked to have no 2 preps the same, because I found if I had 2 preps the same in English, I couldn't remember what I told anybody, and it was a mess. So I'm kind of feeling like that tonight. So I taught a class 8720 earlier, so I'm experiencing that right now. But if I didn't tell you, I took on another class unexpectedly, and I tried to get them up to speed. So as I said, I'm catching up with you guys. But I just want to tell you the reflective questions and stuff of y'all that I read were awesome. I am really, really impressed with your work and how you're thinking, and those kind of things too. So just trust your instincts. You guys are really amazing. I mean, you've got some great thought partners in here, so feel free, guys, to share your ideas, because this is not a course that's driven by Tracy Johnson. This is a course that really I want to be driven by all of you. You've got some coaches out there. We've got some assistant principals. I don't know if I have any principals in this class or not. I don't know if Jason's in here. But some people that are leading schools, department chairs, you name it. It runs the gamut, people in central office. So please, 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 share your ideas and thoughts, because you guys have got some really amazing stuff going on. Oh, Tran is one of our principals. He's with us tonight. So what other questions you guys have?
I would love to apologize for my lack of participation tonight. I really am going to have to rewatch this video, because that's how dead my brain feels at the end of the year. So I just want to apologize, because usually I do participate, but it's like nothing's right now. So I'm going to have to rewatch when I'm in a better place.
Megan, I get it. You know, I had to go to the hospital today, nothing bad, just for a sonogram on my thyroid. But I spent 3.5 hours there for a stupid sonogram that they came back and said everything's great. So yeah, I'm like you. I spent too much time just not quite there. So yeah, my English tonight's not very good either, which is really bad for someone who has a double major in special ed and English. So I apologize as well.
I'm brain dead from sped checkout.
I remember those days. Oh.
Tracy, I'm also in your 720 class, and I didn't see that there was a Zoom until I got onto this class and was checking everything. So I apologize for not seeing that, but I'll watch it. Did you record it by chance?
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay. I'll go back and watch it.
Yeah, and just a reminder, guys, next week is Memorial Day week, so I try to go light on you with assignments, and there's not a Zoom meeting next week unless you just really, really, really want one. But I know everybody's trying to close out school if you haven't already, so I get it. Let me just
good, because it looks like a lot of us are going to be at the Teacher Leader Summit. Yay!
Yeah, I knew there was a lot going on, so that's why I tried to go light on you next week. If you guys have a different template other than the UBD one, you are welcome to use that. I'm not married to any particular format. The whole idea is breaking apart a standard, figuring it out, coming up with your aims, goals, learning targets, activities that are aligned, and including assessment. That's really the big sort of picture. Okay, other questions? Okay, guys, well, I'm going to give you 8 minutes of your life back. So we're going to go ahead and end the meeting. I hope you enjoy your 3-day weekend. If you're already out of school, don't tell us because I would be just really upset because I work all summer. But y'all have a great evening, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.